The horror genre has some set-in-stone tropes that we all love. Tropes like a slasher with a mask, brutal kills, over-the-top special effects, one-liners, final girls, and scream queens. And the latter is what we'll be looking at in today's video, going over my favorite leading ladies in horror. Before we fully jump in, if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, it's good to see you again. The ladies in the horror genre are astronomical when it comes to storytelling. I'd wager more than half of the horror movies that we all love today wouldn't be as great as they are without the leading lady that's in it. And with our first actor, we see a great example of just that. That's what we call transition. Shelly Duvall in The Shining. The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, released in 1980, follows a writer and his family as they go to a remote cabin during the winter. Said cabin gets snowed in, and throughout the movie we watch the writer and dad, Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, as he slowly delves into madness. Which is kind of fair, seeing how the cabin is kind of haunted, and their son is seeing weird visions every once in a while. But hey, kids have crazy imaginations, right? You probably know about The Shining, but if you didn't, it's regarded as one of the best horror movies ever released. Although that wasn't the case on release date. In fact, it didn't really do well in the box office. Now, it's not a slasher horror movie at all. It's much more of a suspense movie. I think there's only like 2, maybe 3 deaths in the movie. I could be completely speaking out of my ass. I have a computer in front of me.
How many deaths in The Shining?
2 people. 2 people died. Now, obviously, The Shining ranking high in many lists of fans in the horror genre is subjective. However, I think a huge part in why the film is put on such a high pedestal is because it illustrates a claustrophobic, fear-inducing nightmare that you can't escape. And that's illustrated with Shelly Duvall's performance as Wendy Torrance. Some of the most iconic scenes in horror, not just in the movie, but in all of horror, features Shelly Duvall.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Obviously, here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny!
Which I don't think she gets enough credit because Jack Nicholson's performance was so good. But the scene that would take 127 takes and would help ignite a long-running controversy is what I'm specifically referencing. Shelly's performance was absolutely manic, and I don't think Jack's monologue would have been nowhere near as scary if it wasn't for her. In fact, I think it would have been just cringy. Like, I see red!
Said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash him right the fuck in.
I would have been laughing. But then again, I wasn't an actor who was berated for 127 takes in a couple of days. Which brings into question, how much of it was actually acting? Now, this is not to say Shelly Duvall is any less of a performer because she's amazing. However, 127 takes? Like, she looks like she's stumbling throughout the shots. That's because, like, I wouldn't be able to walk that long. And unfortunately, the treatment towards Shelly Duvall was notoriously bad. I won't go as far to say abusive because Shelly Duvall herself has said that she enjoyed working with Stanley Kubrick and she enjoyed how the work environment was. It pushed her to her limits and that's what she wanted. But I mean, watch this clip.
All my hair, I pulled hunks of hair out on the windowsill. And the back got caught.
Need to trim that.
Hunks of hair.
Oh, look.
Okay.
It just comes out.
Okay, right now, fellas.
I don't sympathise with Shelley.
You don't sympathize with me.
And there are many mixed reports on Stanley Kubrick's directing. A lot of people on the outside looking in say it's abusive towards their actors. Meanwhile, a lot of reports on the inside say that the actors are pursuing that kind of work environment. And there are also many mixed reports with Stanley Kubrick's relationship with Shelly Duvall, and vice versa. However, many interviews, like I mentioned before, indicate that Shelly Duvall really didn't have a problem with him. With that being said, if anyone talked to someone that I cared about the way he did,
Drop down.
I felt the need to point that out because I'm under the belief that no matter how method you want to get during acting, it's still acting, if that makes sense. Like, Jared Leto shouldn't have, like, mailed people dead rats and shit. That was weird. He's weird, but that's one weird thing that he did. Anyway, Shelly Duvall gave us one of the most iconic characters of all time in horror. I just hate that it was at the cost of her being constantly berated. But Shelly Duvall is literally the person I think of when it comes to Scream Queens, and she's the reason that I made this list in the first place. So I had to give my props to her right away. Sissy Spacek in Carrie. Carrie, directed by Brian De Palma, released in 1976, follows a shy teenage girl without any friends who sounds just like me. Besides the girl part, because I'm a grizzled man, big boy man. Carrie is sheltered by her religious mother, who is just full of love. Okay, alright, maybe not that much love. Play a moaning clip of the mother. That's for editing you. And that mother decided that it would be a better idea to not let a teenage girl know about puberty, more specifically a period, which doesn't go well, because we watch Carrie as she experiences her first period a bit late in life. And by a bit late, I mean like she's senior year in high school. Through this incident, we see other classmates constantly bully her. With puberty plus the bullying, it was already hard enough on Carrie. But on top of everything, she realizes that she has telekinesis powers. And her religious mother is a big fan. Like a big fan.
Witch. That's Satan's power.
But luckily she has prom coming up, as well as one teacher who actually gives a shit about her, which is always good. Hopefully nothing happens to her. But you know how the saying goes, if good things are happening, nothing bad will happen. Carrie gets pranked by her classmates, and then drenched in pig's blood. TikTok and YouTube, it is pig's blood. Pig's blood. There's no human blood, and these guys are just dancing really funny. There's no violence going on here. Throughout the whole prom scene, it is nail-biting. But not because you're scared that people are going to lose their lives, but because you're scared that Carrie is going to get pranked. And she does. Then you go from feeling bad for her and hoping it doesn't happen to hoping that she kills everyone in that gymnasium. And if you weren't rooting for Carrie, then my bad. I guess I won't speak for you again, but you're wrong. Sissy Spacek as Carrie didn't really scream that much. At least the blood-curdling scream. But I think Sissy Spacek's stare encapsulates Carrie from the book. Because her stare just looks like she absolutely wants to murder the whole world, not just the gymnasium, the whole world. And from the book, during the prom scene, Carrie actually goes outside of the gymnasium after she gets pig's blood drenched on her. She's murdered a couple people already. She stops, she laughs, because she realizes what she can do with her powers, and then she goes back into the gymnasium and kills everyone. I'm a sane human. I truly think Sissy Spacek embodied Carrie, and the prom scene is iconic and has been referenced throughout all types of media. I truly can't think of anyone else who could portray her. Like, literally, they've tried. A couple of times.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
Mia Goth, in most things she's in. Mia Goth is one of the new lead ladies in horror. And what makes her a bit different from the others currently is just the amount of weird and abstract shit she does and that she's in. And I mean that with full respect because I love abstract horror. And almost every single time, Mia Goth will deliver on some strange ass performance. I'm obviously talking about Ty West's trilogy in horror recently. It consists of X, which also co-stars Jenna Ortega, who we'll talk about in a second, and Kid Cudi. He's not a lady, or he's not a leading lady, but he's a good rapper, and I like it. He's also a good actor, but Pursuit of Happiness. I'm on the pursuit of happiness. X is followed up by Pearl and then Maxine. And my personal favorite out of the three is Pearl. And don't you worry, because Mia Goth screams a lot, so she definitely counts for the Scream Queen part.
Oh, I'm a star! Please, I'm a star!
And away from the trilogy, Infinity Pool was amazing. It was weird as shit, and I'd honestly say it's even weirder than some of the movies in the trilogy, but she's just as good in it.
Jamesy!
And I'm truly excited because the horror genre is in such good hands with the leading ladies that we've seen in today's era. And just to name a few, we got Jenna Ortega, Melissa Barrera, Maika Monroe, Lupita Nyong'O, which takes us to Lupita Nyong'O, In a Quiet Place, Day One, and Us. Lupita Nyong'O is an Oscar-winning actor who's pretty recognizable. Many will know her from the Black Panther series or the recent Star Wars trilogy.
I am no Jedi, but I know the Force. It moves through and surrounds every living thing.
But Lupita Nyong'o is also an icon within horror. She captivated screens playing two characters in Us, released in 2019 and directed by Jordan Peele, where she's able to portray a loving mom while also a terrifying doppelganger with a smoking problem.
You had to eat rabbit, raw and bloody.
She was in A Quiet Place Day One, which did receive mixed reviews, but I personally really liked it. But I also just like the Quiet Place premise where you just I don't like people talking. I know how ironic that is. But Lupita Nyong'o's performance being restricted because, quiet, still was a stellar showcase. As well as the look at the end. Hey, I'm about to spoil some shit. Skip ahead 10 seconds if you don't want to hear a spoiler for A Quiet Place Day One. Lupita Nyong'o's look at the end of the movie of just pure utter defeat and acceptance that is commonly seen in the horror genre was perfect. Even as the grizzled man I am, I shed one tear, but then I immediately stopped and threw a bear against the wall and then punched him and then gave him some soup afterwards and apologized and read him a book. Anyway, Lupita Nyong'o hasn't done much in the horror genre, but the movies that she has done are extremely well, and I hope we see more of her in the horror genre. Now to someone who's been acting in the horror genre for her whole entire acting life, Jenna Ortega, and a lot of things. Now when it comes to new age scream queens, I think Jenna Ortega takes the cake. Mia Goth's screams are definitely good, but it's not like the blood curdling, I'm gonna die type scream. It's more of the I'm gonna murder you type scream, which is also awesome. But there's like a guttural terror in Jenna Ortega's voice whenever she screams, as well as her face, which is pretty frightening when she screams. That sounded much more rude when I said it. Here's a compilation of screaming.
Bag up, bag up. Bag up, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry.
Now earlier I said Jenna Ortega has been in the horror genre for most of her acting life. And while most of you know her from Scream, but she also dipped her toes in the A24 studios with X, co-starring with Mia Goth. But Jenna Ortega was in another iconic horror movie, Iron Man 3.
I have crippling...
No, Insidious.
Ma'am, people who've been afflicted by...
Who's the lady?
So she's been in the genre since 2013. I would have been 11, and now I'm 64. Time flies. And her filmography in horror isn't just a victim getting murdered all the time, but she also expands her range in humorous horror with The Babysitter, Killer Queen, as well as Beetlejuice.
You are meddling with powers you do not understand. Cut the shit.
And I was also pleasantly surprised to the levels of gore in Wednesday. I said this earlier when I was talking about Mia Goth, but the horror genre is in good hands. Now, we're going to wrap it up with an oldie but a goldie, but I do want to mention some honorable mentions that I just haven't listed here. Neve Campbell, Sigourney Weaver, Heather Langenkamp, Samara Weaving, and so many more. If this video's response is good, I'll probably make another in the future, which means you should like and comment if you like it. But finally, let's end it with Jaimie Lee Curtis. Jaimie Lee Curtis in literally almost everything. Jaimie Lee Curtis is an OG scream queen and final girl, making her, in my opinion, the best leading lady in all of horror. She's obviously famous for her role as Laurie Strode in the Halloween franchise. The original Halloween was released in 1978, and it was directed by horror legend John Carpenter. And the series only just ended with Halloween Ends, which we don't talk about. Not because we're sad that it's over, but because we're sad that it ended that way. But that makes Jaimie Lee Curtis run as Laurie Strode 44 years. That would be 2 of my lifetimes constantly running from Michael Myers. And I don't know about y'all, but Jaimie Lee Curtis also murdered the embodiment of evil a couple of times, so that's a pretty high bar to, surpass. So I think instead, I'll just die. But Jaimie Lee Curtis wasn't just iconic in the Halloween franchise. No. Come here. You think that's it? No. Here, I'm gonna list off what she was in. Just in the horror genre, she's been in so much more, like Borderlands, an amazing movie. The horror movies Jaimie Lee Curtis has been in includes The Fog, Prom Night, Terror Train, Road Games. She was on the grinder in 1980 and 1981. Virus, Haunted Mansion, and that's not including the 175 Halloween films that she's in. I don't know what else I can say other than thank you, just for being as iconic as you were. I'm talking as if she's watching this. If you are, can you say hi to my mom? She's even a bigger fan of you, but she really likes the yogurt you sponsor. Alright, so that's gonna be the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. It really helps me out. If I missed any of your favorite leading ladies, let me know in the comments below, because I probably will make another video. If you enjoyed my yapping, then you might want to subscribe. I don't want to tell you what to do or anything, but if you do subscribe, you might be spared from the floods that are inevitably coming. I'm just kidding, we're all gonna die, but at least we will die together. Right? Alright, have a good one. See you next week.